Hello everyone. In this topic of the Windows 11 course, we will see how to use command line utility tool which is called as Diskpart to shrink the volume. In our earlier session, we used to use the GUI tool which is called as disk management. If I open the disk management utility tool, I'll be able to see the disks which are discovered by our Windows operating system. So these are the disks which are available in our Windows operating system. If I wanted to extend, I can simply right click and extend the volume. If the volume, if this particular disk has free space, since there is no free space, I'll not be able to extend. Now what I can do is I can shrink the volume. To shrink the volume, you need to ensure that particular volume doesn't have much data and it has free space. If I go to the volume, if I go to my computer, I can see for the volume n, there is no data at all. So what I will do is we will test with some data so that we'll also verify what will happen if there is data inside the volume n. So I'll copy some data here to volume n and we will use the diskpart utility to shrink the volume n. Now we have copied some data here. I will open the command prompt. I will select the start, then type cmd, and I will use run as administrator to run the command prompt with administrator privilege. I will select yes, then I will maximize. I will use diskpart utility tool. So using diskpart, we will be able to manage the disks and volumes. If I use command list disks, it is going to list the disk. So I need to select the disk. I have to select disk number 2, which I wanted to shrink. For that, I will say select SELECT and disk number 2. So now current disk is disk number 2. I will enter list volume to list all the volumes. So we have volume N, M here. We can see there is volume M and N. Right. I wanted to shrink this particular volume, which is volume N. So what I will do is I have to select the volume. Select volume, volume number 5. Now volume number 5 is selected. I need to use the command shrink, SHRINK, shrink. Then I have to set desired value in megabytes, DSIRED. So how much I wanted to shrink out of this volume. So this volume is around 4 GB. I wanted to shrink around 2 GB. So for that, what I will do is, so I'll enter 2048. So basically 2048 is 2 GB. I will enter and it has successfully completed the command. Now we can see the volume has been shrink. So there is an additional space here which is shrink, and we will be able to extend the volume if at all we want it, or we can use this particular volume with a new volume. This is how we will be able to shrink an existing volume. To shrink the volume, we need to ensure that that particular volume is not fully used. There should be some free space so that we can use that particular free space to shrink the volume. And if I go to the my computer, we will be able to see what has happened after shrinking the volume. The data is intact, and whatever data we have copied to the N drive, it has not impacted. So whenever we do shrink, it is an online shrink. There will be no impact to the volume. So this is how we will be able to use the diskpart utility tool to manage the disks and volumes. We can shrink the volume, we can extend the volume in Windows operating system using diskpart utility tool.